Well, this is a stressful time if you're a home buyer and especially a first-time home buyer, just trying to figure out what to do. I mean, which direction do you go? Do you wait for rates to fall before you buy? Do you wait for prices to soften? Do you just dive in and do it now because you're prepared, right? You got your savings, you're ready to go. You're going to be in your place for at least 4 or 5 years and you want to be in that area or that home and that's where you're going to stay. Got stable employment, all of those things are in place, but you're still worried about the timing. So today and next week, I'm going to go over kind of a two-part deal here to help you understand what to think about, how to view the numbers, and help incorporate that into the highly emotional decision that is buying a home, right? It's always an emotional thing. So today, let's talk about affordability. There have been a number of articles that have come out over the past couple of weeks talking about the fact that we are at a 35-year low in affordability, almost a 40-year low in affordability. Since the mid 80s, a lot of articles are saying it's not been this unaffordable to have a mortgage payment, to own a home. Of course, we see the surface area of that, the surface reason for that. Home prices are 2, 3 times, in some cases 4 times higher than they were back 35 years ago. And interest rates are getting up there, right? They're inching up as we see interest rates in the high sevens now, even low eights for some programs. That's cause for concern. Now, do we think interest rates will stay like this forever? No, they'll go up and they'll go down. And typically, when the Federal Reserve does what they do, they overreact one way or the other. They cause a boom cycle and then they overreact on increasing interest rates. And then they see that they've gone too far and they overreact, bringing them back down too quickly as well. So we could easily see the same typical knee-jerk reaction from the Federal Reserve we've seen over the past 40 years, 4 or 5 times, coming up here in the next year or two. But for right now, what happens if you are in a situation where you're ready to buy, you found the right home, or you think you're there and you want to move forward? Should you pay attention to all the negative news media out there about affordability? I mean, here's an article right here I'm sharing with you, right? It says home affordability hits 35-year low. How do you manage that? Well, let's talk about this for just a second. Let's go to the next slide, in fact, and we'll discuss, assuming I can do this. There we go. So affordability, let's talk about the kind of the components of this, right? Payments have actually risen about 90% over the past 2 years, almost 100%. That's a lot, right? That's double your house payment of what you would have had in 2020 or 2021. However, most people leave out the next point. Income is also up about 16% since the end of 2021. If you only use 25% of your income, right? Typically in your income, the way we calculate it, we use about 25% of your income towards housing. That's the way typically the budgets work for most people. This means that there is an offset that you have to do. And if you take inflation out of that, the offset is about a 43% offset. So it's not quite the 90% rise. It's more like a 43% rise if you incorporate the 16% income raise and the fact that only 25% of income is used towards housing. So it's still less affordable than it was. There's no doubt about that. I'm not trying to talk you out of, saying, hey, it's not affordable. You're right. It is less affordable, but not quite as bad as what you're thinking. Now, think about this again. Next year's income rise, along with a potential 1% drop in interest rates, which could happen. Now, I'm not going to guarantee it. Could be a couple of years before that happens, but let's say it happened next year. That makes affordability even better. And remember, there are still more qualified buyers than available inventory in most parts of the country. And that is pretty true here as well, right? In the Treasure Valley, there's a pretty good balance between buyers and sellers, between demand and supply, which is why we haven't seen prices drop. In fact, we've seen prices increase over the summer and into the fall, because even though demand has shriveled a little bit, so has supply. Supply has increased, now starting to increase seasonally like it typically does in the fall, but there's still enough demand to keep prices propped up and in fact have increased since the beginning of the summer. Interesting times, kind of weird. So let's talk about this in the terms of numbers. I'm going to show you something kind of interesting here. So the end of 2021, let's say you had a $400,000 loan amount, which is kind of typical now, right? In that range for a first-time home buyer. And let's say you got a 3.75% interest rate. Well, your principal and interest payment would be $1,850. And let's assume your combined household income is $9,000. Now, if you're watching this and you're in Canyon County or in some other areas, you might go, that's not true for my area. Well, that's true. In some parts of the valley, household incomes are lower than that. But in the Boise Meridian area, This is actually the average, believe it or not, for household incomes now in 2023. Now, if you factor in the fact that we've had a 9% appreciation rate or more, actually, I'm trying to be conservative here, between 2021 and now, right? Fall of 2023, and interest rates are now in the sevens instead of the threes. What would that mean for your payment? Well, you now have a payment, if you bought now instead of then, of $2,974. So that's an $1,124 increase per month. At the same time, though, don't forget, income has increased. So 8% increase in income, that's ADP, provide that source, puts you at about $9,720, right, for income. So that means that you've had an increase of $720. If you take into account the income, you've only had an increase of $720, not $1,124, because of the increase in income as well. So that means we also need to take into account, of course, food and gas. We've had some inflation, so let's be fair. Let's add $400 a month to your budget. In that case, you'd have a total increase of $1,524 over the end of 2021, which means take that $720 off of that. That means it is $804 less affordable per month now for a $400,000 or $430,000 mortgage than it was at the end of 2021. So $804 a month. That's a pretty big increase. There's no doubt about it. But let's talk about this. There's also been another increase, right? For 2023, another 6% increase in income, getting us up to about $10,300. And that is very close to reality as well, right here in the Meridian area. So what does that mean for the increase? Well, you've got another $583 increase in income. So let's take that same 1524 number, right? The increase of inflation for food and gas plus the increased payment and the increased household income. You actually are only $221 a month less affordable if you factor all that in. Okay. So let's take a look. And then if you look forward in the future, let's look forward a year or two down the road when we have interest rates dropping by 1%. So we're back in hopefully in the 5s or 2%. That would drop your payment down to $1,300. You still have that increase we talked about, but that means you'd only be $3 a month more, right, in payment than before. So about the same if you take into account the big picture with the increase in income as well as the increase in housing expenses. It does actually make some sense, right? Now, right now we're not there. We're $200-$300 a month more, maybe more like $500 a month more if you say, hey, Bill, let's be fair, wages haven't increased as much in the Treasure Valley as some other areas of the country, and that's fair. This may be a bit of an exaggeration on the increase of the income. So let's say, we're $500 a month more now. Yes, that's a significant amount. I'm not poo-pooing that. I'm not trying to minimize that, but it's not as much as you might think at first glance. It's not over $1,000 a month more in payment increase, affordability, because there have been income increases as well. So I want to just give you some food for thought here, something to think about. There's always a positive spin, a positive side to everything when you look at things and say, okay, well, maybe it's not quite as bad. Yes, it's less affordable, but not as unaffordable as I was thinking it was at first glance. Now, next week, I'm going to go over what's called a cost of waiting analysis and show you the numbers of what you're sacrificing by not buying this fall or winter when traditionally home prices are a little softer, especially during the holiday season, even with interest rates at these high 8% range levels or high 7s, low 8s range. What you're sacrificing by not purchasing now and waiting for rates to fall or waiting for something else to change or shift in the market. I'll show you those numbers. It's going to be very fascinating. I think you'll be really interested to see what I have to share there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the charts here. Today, we have a little bit of a bounce, which is nice. So in the universal mortgage-backed security charts, we have a 24 basis point improvement. Remember, about 50 basis points equals roughly an 1/8% in interest rate. So we're not quite to the point where we've improved the interest rates by an 1/8%, but we've had a bounce off of these really low levels, right? This bottom that we'd formed over the past 4 days, 3-4 days since the middle of last week, we seem to be bouncing off of that. We tested it again today, but we're bouncing off. So let's see if we have more momentum. We can continue this price improvement, which means rates would be hopefully getting better. We maybe see an 1/8% or so better interest rate maybe in the next few days as we have all this room up here to the next ceiling of resistance, this next Fibonacci level. there is the potential for that to happen. So let's cross our fingers, hope for a little momentum here. In the meantime, have a wonderful day.